Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judy, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the Full10Yard NFL podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. We are now officially in the second half of the season, meaning it is week 10, people. Wow. And joining me to break down all of the games you can see on UK TV this week before we pick our winners in the rest of the games is a familiar face in Shaun Blundell. Lovely to have you back on the pod, mate. It's been a while. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's been a while. We've been trying to do it for the last few weeks, haven't we? And for one reason or another, it hasn't quite worked out. But yeah, I'm doing good, mate. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's lovely to me. Yeah, it's always difficult trying to fit around my schedule for a lot of people as well because I'm busy most of the week as well. So trying to book a podcast sometimes is a nightmare, mate. But look, we got there. So that's all that matters. Anyway, there's only one place to start, and that is Thursday night football. And there was absolutely no chance of staying up for this last night, so I watched it this morning. Obviously, a 1-7 team against a 2-7 team, and it was a 2-7 team that came away victorious. The Bears winning 16-13. They hung on to victory in the final few minutes after Eddie Pinheiro missed a 59-yarder to tie the game. It was just short. The highlight of this game was a 79-yard punt return touchdown for the Panthers in the first quarter to open the scoring, but from then on, the Bears just controlled the game. It's a typical Thursday night game, this low-scoring, close game, and it was probably a win-win for the Bears either way. In fact, a win last night probably gave them actually a better chance of getting the number one overall pick. So either way, whatever happened, if they lost, they would have got not much for a change. So for them, it's probably more about momentum than anything. I thought our defence played pretty well again compared to what we saw at the start of the season. They presented the Panthers with a lot of third and longs, and they just couldn't get out of those situations. And I'm starting to wonder if this is a Frank Reich issue rather more than a Bryce Young issue or something like that, because I saw an interesting graphic this week because Bryce Young has had the least amount of play action passes in the entire league in this season, which that's bread and butter for a rookie quarterback. Normally they try and take it out of just pure shotgun or under center snaps. He didn't look great last night, but if all you're asking him to do is just stand back and throw short passes, I think he had 4.8 yards per attempt last night. What do you really expect? And also they're sort of in a weird situation now. Like the general manager Scott Fitter is probably under pressure too. They gave up all this to get their number one overall pick last year, and it looks like they probably would have ended up with it this year, and they haven't got it this year now. So he's been in the job for a couple of years now. He's not really had success with his draft picks. I mean, Ike Mekwonu is looking like a bit of a turnstile on offensive tackle at the minute, and last year he looked quite good. So yeah, it's just a bit of a weird thing going around, especially on the offensive side of the ball with Carolina. But it's been a disaster. They're low on talent. They haven't got much cap room, and obviously now probably won't have a high draft pick the way it's going because they've got a couple of second rounders, but they've got nothing in the first. Do you think that Frank Reich probably could go one and done because this is his second job as a head coach and he's not doing a great job at all? And do you think they could probably clean house? Is looking at something's going to change in this Carolina building this season?
It feels that way, doesn't it, mate? It definitely feels like a one and done, let's be honest. Realistically, had a pretty shaky time at Indianapolis, all things considered. It wasn't great. Appreciate that obviously when he took that job, he obviously expected he was going to have Andrew Luck for probably his whole tenure there, and that obviously didn't work out. But considering his reputation as a bit of a quarterback whisperer, the guy that can sort of, turn a pretty average offense into an above average offense, he certainly hasn't done that, at his time in Indy or certainly his short tenure as it is in Carolina. I think he's probably brought them more into focus because of how well CJ Stroud's played as well. When you look at what the Texans offense has been able to do, let's put it into some sort of context. Bryce Young's had 8 touchdowns all season in, now 9 games. CJ Stroud had half of that in one game the other day. So realistically speaking, that probably isn't helping the cause. It ultimately doesn't change things. I think, like you say, it's a team that's really low on talent. There's no doubt that it's low on talent. their star wide receiver, if you like, this season, and again last night, has been Adam Thielen, which isn't a great place to be in. Nothing against Adam Thielen, but he's obviously a veteran that's been brought in to hopefully elevate the young talent around him. But nobody seems to really be wanting to step up and take that sort of spot from him, if you like. So really disappointing day in terms of Carolina. The Bears, again, not too much to write home about. I suppose they'll look at it now as a chance for progress this season. They obviously only won 3 games last season. They've got back to that 3-game winning mark already. As you say, they're in a really strong position draft-wise coming up. But I think a lot of people were high on the Bears pre-season. That's obviously been tempered since. The two teams that, like you say, it wasn't one for the neutral, was it, last night, mate? Like you say. You've done one better than me, mate. You've at least done your homework and watched it this morning. I said to you before we hit the record button, I just about know the score, mate. So, not one I'll be rushing to get on DAZN, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think going back to the Bears as well, I think they've actually got a lot better recently, especially their game plans. It looks like they're actually sort of coaching and calling something that works now, especially on defense. At the start of the year, they were getting run over by the Packers in week 1 on the top of their head, a lot of other teams as well. It feels like they've got know what they're doing. Obviously, bringing them on to Sweat, he had 8 pressures last night, so that's another sign that you're trying to get some pass pressure. Nick and Ngakoue as well. He had a sack last night. That's something they've lacked for a while. And on offense as well, it looks like they're putting Tyson Badgett into a good position to at least succeed for his sort of limited skill set compared to what Justin Fields has as well. So I'm hoping that when Fields does come back in the next couple of weeks, they'll call something better, because this coach and staff are again like Carolina probably, they're probably coaching for their life, because Eberflus is he's on the hot seat. I think Ryan Poles has kept his job by the absolute fleece of Carolina. That he's done a couple of trades now that are starting to pan out quite well, but it looks like they might probably go for an offensive head coach. I expect whether they keep Justin Fields or go for someone like Caleb Williams or Drake May in the draft, we don't know. But again, like, as you said, Sean, they've got better recently, and they really need to, because Matt Eberflus is coaching for his job, really, isn't he?
No, he definitely is, mate. He definitely is. I think, like you say, they're in a good position in terms of the sort of medium-term future. They obviously need to hit on these draft picks when they come around to fruition. It's all well and good, quote unquote, winning the trade, but obviously you need to then make it pay off. So that'll be the key thing. I think Eberflus probably still needs to probably get another 2 or 3 wins at least to have any sort of relative amount of comfort, and even then it'd still probably only be a relative amount of comfort. It's a division where, we'll wait and see what the Vikings do. We'll obviously talk about them in a minute. But they're obviously going to have problems, or potentially have problems, between now and the end of the season with their quarterback injuries. The Packers are obviously in a bit of a rebuild, so it's an opportunity really for the Bears to be competitive. He certainly needs a few more wins than what he's got at the minute, mate, that's for sure.
Yeah, okay. Right, we're on to Sunday now, and before we get into the main slate, we'll start with our first featured game. It is, of course, the second Frankfurt game of the week, of the season, second one in 2 weeks. And this one, it's not as enticing as the first one. It's the Colts against the Patriots. The Patriots are the de facto home team in this game, but it is still very important to the growth of the sport, especially as in Germany there are a load of Patriots fans as well. So I think it'll probably be quite a big home crowd for them. The Colts are coming off a win. Their defense won them the game last week. The offense needs to be better, and they're probably against a better defense as well, you'd like to say, too. There was a report on Wednesday that apparently Bill Belichick could be fired if they lose this one, going into their bye week. If they're going to their bye at 2-8, that's a really bad position for the Patriots to be in. And while I believe that's not going to happen, it shows how bad of a situation the Patriots are in right now, doesn't it?
It does, mate. I wrote a few weeks ago, it feels like Belichick should probably step aside gracefully, to be honest, because even the fact that it's being talked about now just doesn't feel right, when you consider the amount of success that he's had. There's obviously the arguments of greatest of all time and all of that kind of stuff. Let's not get into that debate now, but he's certainly in the conversation as a bare minimum, isn't he? So, ultimately, it is a rebuilding mode. They haven't obviously got the quarterback. Mac Jones has proved that he's not the answer there. New England have never particularly had great skill positions. If you look even through the Tom Brady era, the best wide receiver duo he had was was probably when they had that couple of seasons of Randy Moss with Wes Welker. But outside of that, you're
Well,
struggling.
neither of those were drafted by the Patriots either. It's a drafting thing that's been a problem with them.
Yeah,
Those were, Wes Welker came into the league from Miami, and Randy Moss is, a journeyman, but at least he's been on teams by the time he reached the Patriots.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. And that's what I say. They've always seemingly lacked at the skill position, haven't they? It's obviously been a massively disappointing season. To even think that they'll be as low as 2-8 is just phenomenal. But as you say, they've got a big European following. Let's not be naive here. As much as I support an underdog, a lot of fans, if they're getting into the game, will look for somebody that's quite successful because it's more fun to follow a successful team. So anybody in the last 15, 20 years that's got into the NFL, there's a strong chance that you may well have picked the New England Patriots because of all the success that they had. So, they've obviously got a huge following. I actually think they'll probably win this game. I think it's a game that, like you say, I think it'll come down probably to defence, and I think the Patriots probably just about have got the better of that battle. The Colts have been a little bit up and down. Some weeks they've looked really good. They played Cleveland a few weeks ago and put 30-odd points on that defence, which has been obviously up there as one of the league's best. And then other weeks they struggle to move the ball. So you never quite know what you're going to get with them. There still seems to be this reluctance to really hand the keys back full time to Jonathan Taylor. There's still a bit too much Zach Moss for my liking. Not saying that he's doing a bad job, but ultimately you've now paid Jonathan Taylor to be the guy. So use him as the guy. But yeah, I don't expect it to be a particular thriller, mate. Again, it's one of those. Obviously, it's a better time for us as neutrals in the UK. But on the flip side, I very much doubt that many of our American friends will be setting their alarm clocks, making sure that they don't miss this one. It's actually just the way it pans out, isn't it? Like you say, last week was an absolute blockbuster matchup on paper. Wasn't necessarily the greatest of games in the end, but certainly the intrigue was there heading into it. You'll probably find this one will probably now end up 45-42. No one's expecting it. It'll probably be a corker, but on paper at least it doesn't look like a particularly stellar one, does it?
Yeah, and I think obviously in the UK as well, having an added bonus of having another earlier game as well, having 14 straight hours of football is a brilliant proposition on Sunday night as well. I won't be watching this one live because I am working a game on Sunday, so I'll just get back in time for the 6 p.m. window. But I will catch this one up on Monday morning. I think with New England as well, the going back to why they've done quite disappointing this season as well. They've not only faced the toughest schedule in the league, they've also been very injured. And that theme carries into this one as well. It looks like they're going to be without Devontae Parker, Trent Brown, and JC Jackson. They've already been ruled out. So that's not great for them. But for me, I'm looking to the coaching matchup. Really, obviously, you've got the young hot commodity in Shane Steichen, who has done a very good job with these Colts. They've been way better than people thought they would this year. Obviously, was the man that transformed Jalen Hurts last year as well. And then going against the old guard and the greatest of all time, so some people may believe, and he is close to Don Shula's record as well in Bill Belichick. I think we're likely to see a lot of turnovers in this one because Matt Jones leads the league with 18 turnover-worthy plays, and Minshew is second with 17 turnover-worthy plays. So that's 35 plays that probably should have been a turnover between them this season. So I think that we're probably likely to see a couple of them, which means it'll be a defensive scrap, a lot of turnovers, and more often than not, that's where the Patriots thrive. But missing the likes of Christian Gonzalez and Matt Judon, as well as JC Jackson on that defense, who's actually had an impact since he came in from the Chargers. It's been a lot more difficult this season to do that for the Patriots. So picking a winner is probably difficult. Both have landed in Germany this morning, so there's no advantage to either team here. No one's spent the week in Germany or anything. But I'm going to go for the least injured team, and that's the Colts, because the Patriots are so banged up. I don't know who's going to play for, who's going to suit up for them, especially on the defensive side of the football. So yeah, I'm going to go for the Colts in this one.
I've been useless at pick'ems this year, mate, so probably don't listen to me. Like I said, I'll probably just about shade New England. I think they've probably just about got the better defence. JC Jackson's an intriguing one for me. Talk about a fall from grace. I think officially he's ruled as out on the injury report. He's out because of reliability issues. I mean, that's the most weird injury I've ever heard. Apparently he's missed curfews and this, that and the other. But, considering this was a guy that was so sought after that the Chargers paid him, 82, something like that.
A lot of money.
Only 12 months ago, and now he's back to New England. But not only back to New England, he's now a reserve player in New England. I mean, just an unbelievable fall from grace. But like I say, I just think that New England will just about have enough. Like you say, I would fully expect it to be turnover heavy. So yeah, we'll wait and see.
Right, we'll move over to the 6 p.m. window, and for me, we'll go into the feature game in that one. And for me, I think this is probably the game of the week between the Niners and the Jaguars. Both teams are coming off bye weeks, and before their byes, we're heading in completely different directions. The Jags have won 5 straight before their bye, and last played on Thursday Night Football in week 8, meaning they've not played for 17 days. They're super fresh, which is good for Trevor Lawrence's knee. The Niners started the season 5-0, but lost 3 straight before their bye, looking a completely different team after they lost, they didn't lose, but after McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, who they have lost for a few games, got dinged up in the loss to your Cleveland Browns, Sean. We'll start with the Niners. They've averaged on offense 17 points per game in those 3 losses, which is almost halved from their 33.4 points per game in their first 5. So obviously they're scoring half the offensive points they did in the start of the season. And then Steve Wilkes' defense has faced a lot of criticism too, allowing 24.3 points per game in those losses, when before that it was 13.6 points per game. So again, that's almost doubled. Brock Purdy in that time period as well for the Niners, he's thrown 5 interceptions and he's had 9 turnover-worthy plays in those 3 losses. That's 1 more interception than the rest of his 14 games combined, and that's 9 of his 21 turnover-worthy plays he's had in his entire career have come in those games too. So that is it looks like their defense has sort of adjusted to what Shanahan wanted to do, and they've forced him to go more. His average depth of target has increased in these games, going more down the field, and he's been caught out because of that. And also they're taking away the middle of the field as well, which is where Purdy has cooked over the last couple of years, you say now. The offensive line hasn't been as great as it has been this year either. Trent Williams has been hurt, but I also think we're just not seeing that Purdy is like an elite QB. That so when everything's not perfect, I mean he's not perfect either. He's just been fine. It's a weird one. I'm interested to see how they look with everyone a bit healthier now. Going into, obviously, Shanahan's had 2 weeks to game plan as well against a top defense. This Jags defense has been very opportunistic. Do you think Kyle Shanahan will have something off his sleeve, Sean?
I think the bye week's just come at a really good time. I still think the 49ers are a really good football team. I think it feels as though the sky's been falling in. But ultimately, they've had a couple of key injuries, but I do think they are still a very good team. I think Kyle Shanahan's still a very, very good coach. And ultimately, like I say, when you look at the games that they've had, the Bengals are on a bit of a resurgence. So ultimately, that was always going to be a competitive game. I've mentioned the Browns defense already. That's obviously been, a tough nut for a lot of teams to crack. So, they've lost 3 games, but they're not 3 games that ultimately you sort of think, well, they definitely should have been, having a cakewalk in these games either. I think Brock Purdy's fine, personally. We hear a lot about his assistant QB. I find that the most bizarre insult in the world, to be honest, because you still need to be a pretty good quarterback to run the system that you're being asked to run. I think he's fine. I think he's been trying to force it, to be honest, the last few games. And that's where the turnover plays have come. He's been the best that he's been when he's just been efficient and he's taken what the defense have given him. He's probably tried to make up for some of the inefficiencies that have been elsewhere. I think the boys coming a good time for the Jags as well. As you say, they had a tough schedule there, didn't they, with those back-to-back London weeks? Obviously that was the first time ever. Like you say,
and then not having a bye after that as well.
Yeah, exactly that, mate. Exactly that. Like you say, a couple of weeks in London, straight back over to the States, back into action. And then, like you say, a quick turnaround for a Thursday night game as well. So a really tricky sort of period, but obviously, these things are always a lot easier when you're winning football games, aren't they? And they've obviously managed to do that consistently. I'm still not convinced that they're one of the elites, if I'm honest. I think the record would indicate that they are in terms of 6-2. But I'm not massively convinced. You look at it, Trevor Lawrence only got 9 touchdown passes on the year, which obviously is averaging just over 1 a game. Now, realistically, to be in the elite, you'd be probably looking for a lot more production than that. I think Travis Etienne's a fine running back, but again, outside of him, you're not getting anyone else on the ground. And I think the wide receivers are all still trying to find their own place in this offense. Kirk as well with Calvin Ridley, good individual players. But ultimately, I think there's still a few question marks about both of these teams, really. And I think it is a really intriguing matchup, as you say. If it wasn't the 6 o'clock window, I'd be definitely watching it. My eyes will obviously be elsewhere, but it'll be certainly one that I'll be looking to sort of keep an eye on and see what's going on. They are, like I say, two of the better teams in the league, that's for sure. I've just got a sneaky feeling that, like I say, the bye week probably comes at a good time for both of these. And I do quite fancy the 49ers to game plan a win in this one, although they are obviously on the road.
Yeah, I'm higher on the Jags than you are. I think they've got a great defense, and that's on top of an offense that has a lot of good skill position players. That's really been the key to how they've won these games. They're fifth in points per game allowed. They've led the league in turnovers per game as well at 2.3. They're 10th in the red zone and 5th on third down, which is those are all and they've had a lot of sacks as well, and that's all the key areas that you need to be successful on defense. Yes, they give up yards, but situationally they've been very good, and those are the categories that matter. Darius Williams and Andre Sisco have 3 interceptions each. Josh Allen has 9 sacks, and he's played one less game than a lot of the people that are leading the sack race as well. So he could easily be leading the league in sacks by the end of this game. And then there's their offense. They're led by Trevor Lawrence, who I think has really come on in the last couple of years, especially from the Urban Meyer year. I think you mentioned obviously he has had 9 touchdowns. A lot of the time it's because they've struggled in the red zone on offense, but recently what they've been trying to do, they've just fed Travis Etienne in the red zone, and that's been working as well. So that's why his numbers, you say, are less than others. They're getting loads out of him. I think I like the tight end duo in Evan Ingram, Brenton Strange too, and obviously Ridley and Kirk are great receivers as well. I think they're just an O-line away from being a top offense, and I think that's another reason why you'd say Lawrence hasn't really had a stellar season, is because he's getting the ball out incredibly quick just to avoid a sack. Really, he's been sacked quite a lot, and he is the 4th quickest time to throw in the league at 2.48 seconds, behind Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Burrow, and Mac Jones, who again, Burrow and Jones have atrocious offensive lines, so I think it sort of follows that theme as well. And then Tua has a very, very quick release, so he can get the ball out in less than 2 seconds a lot of the time as well, even though he has had a good offensive line this year. I'm picking San Francisco just because I think their defense is probably a due performance. They've been it doesn't feel like Nick Bosa has had a great season. He's been quiet for a few games, especially down that losing stretch. I feel like he's going to have a big game in this one, especially against a banged up and not very talented Jaguars offensive line. So I'm going to go for the Niners, but I think this one will be close. And I with the Dolphins on the bye week as well, I think I'll be watching this game in the 6 p.m. window for sure. So I'm looking forward to it, but just picking the Niners.
Yeah, I think Chase Young makes a big difference as well. That one's gone under the radar a little bit because obviously they haven't played since the trade deadline. So it'll be really interesting to see him added to this defense as well. The front is phenomenal, and like you say, I just think that's where they probably win this game. I don't think it'll be particularly high scoring, to be honest. I think it'll be quite a tight one, and I just think the field position probably suits the 49ers. Like I say, should be a really good game though, mate. Definitely.
Right, we'll go through and pick our predictions, or pick our winners in the rest of the 6 p.m. Games, starting with a fun one in Cincinnati. The Texans head to the Bengals. Stroud versus Burrow. And with the way both teams have been lately, this probably could be a shootout. The Bengals have won the last 4. We want to make it 5 before their big clash with the Ravens on Thursday Night Football next week. But they will be without T. Higgins by the sounds of things. He's missing this game with a hamstring injury. He's played a big part in their turnaround since coming back from injury a few weeks ago. So if he's out again, that will be a big miss, I think. But the Texans are without a star receiver of their own by the sounds of things, and Nico Collins, who hasn't practiced this week with a calf injury. He's obviously a big part of the Houston passing attack as well, and would be a big miss. A win for the Texans would firmly put them in the wildcard race, and with plenty of winnable games coming up as well. If they win this one, I would pick them to maybe sneak into the playoffs as a 17 or something. I like watching both of these teams. Obviously, 2 great offenses to watch. The defenses of both teams are quite good as well, quite good situationally. Sounds like the Texans are going to get Derek Stingley back at some point as well. Maybe not in this game, but if they had a corner in there that later in the season, that'd be great. But I'm going to pick the Bengals just because with the way they've looked like one of the best teams in football the last couple of weeks, and I can't pick against them really. But I'm really looking forward to watching this game as well.
Yeah, I think, like you say, if this was at Houston, I think you'd probably be more on the upset radar than potentially you are with it being at Cincy. Like you said, the results in the last 3 weeks in particular, I know they've won 4 in a row, but the opponents in the last 3 weeks being the Bills, the Niners and the Seahawks, they're 3 quality wins against 3 tough opponents. So I think the Bengals have done what they always do, seemingly started the season really slowly. It seems to have been a trend now for the last 2 or 3 years, and then they sort of pick up this mid-season form, and they do look really, really good. As you say, there's no doubt about it. They do look really, really good. Struggling a little bit on the ground in terms of getting production through the running game, but ultimately, when you've got Joe Burrow at quarterback, you're not overly concerned about what production you're getting, I guess, from your running game, are you? I liked Houston at the start of the season. I think if you recall back to our start of the season pods, I think I had the Texans as probably the second best team in the South, behind the Jags, and they've certainly looked it. Really exciting to watch. CJ Stroud's just been beyond phenomenal. He's been absolutely incredible. I think he's up there, to be honest, in terms of probably, offensive player of the year kind of category at this moment in time. I don't think he'll be in the MVP race because I don't think the Texans will ultimately win enough games. But look, he's nailed on for offensive rookie of the year at the minute. I don't think anybody's close, but you can make the argument that he's even probably sort of talking himself into the overall conversation with how good he's been. I don't think there's been. If I said to you now at the minute, mate, name me 5 quarterbacks that have played better than him, you're going to have to stop and think about it at least. And that to be honest, probably tells you all that you need to know. I really like this Texans team, but I do think at home, I do think the Bengals will take care of business. But as you say, it could be a real, real fun one, this.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move over to your Browns, Sean. They've gone to Baltimore. The Ravens are 6.5-point favourites in this one, in a key game in the AFC North title race here. 2 of the best defences in the league. The Browns' offense doesn't really match the Ravens' offense, but I think it will make this one interesting for sure. If they can run the ball well, as they have done most of the season. The Ravens won 28-3 in Cleveland in Week 4, but that was obviously the DTR game, so I don't think you can take away much from that as well. I actually thought you were quite good in offense last week, and I thought Deshaun played pretty well in spots. So if you play like that against this Baltimore team, then I think in this game. What are your thoughts before I pick a winner?
I think, like you say, I would completely discard what you saw in Week 4, because I think ultimately, it wasn't a case of DTR knew about it on the Wednesday and the Browns had a whole week to prepare. That was a week where everybody in the organisation assumed that Deshaun Watson was playing, and then 2 hours or 3 hours before kickoff, it was announced that he wasn't going to, and you could tell it was an absolute car crash. So I wouldn't read a great deal into it. I think the Browns have consistently in his career played Lamar Jackson pretty well. But Lamar Jackson on that day in particular made some really, really impressive plays. Some throws that were only where his receiver could get them. He's always got that elusiveness in terms of his scramble ability. Ultimately he has been, a quality operator and continues to be a little bit of kryptonite for the Browns. And always has been. I think Jim Schwartz will probably blitz more often in this game. The Browns have ran a bit of a bear front in recent games as well when teams have gone to the run, so they've had 5 down linemen. I wouldn't be surprised to see them do that because I think one thing I would say with this Baltimore offense, as impressive as it has been, is I always say the same thing. If you can limit what they can do in the run game and you try and make them more one-dimensional, you've got more of a chance. And that's not to say that I'm saying Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball and all of this kind of rubbish. I'm not saying that at all. But ultimately, if you take away or you try and limit what they do in the run game, you've got half an opportunity. They put up nearly 300 yards on the ground last week against Seattle.
Yeah.
So everything comes off that. Lamar's then able to do his play-action passing. Obviously, when he's outside the pocket, if the field's open, he can obviously take off with his legs. Everything really starts with that run game. So I'd imagine the Browns will have a good plan for the run game. And I think, like you say, mate, in terms of the offense for the Browns, there were flashes last week. There were flashes. the frustrating thing is we still only get flashes. We don't get anything sort of consistent at all. Anything in the short and intermediate range was wayward last week. Surprisingly, the deep ball was fine. But it was really the quick game. It was the screens. It was the slants. It was that kind of stuff that ultimately the timing wasn't quite there. But that's only going to come from consistently getting reps and consistently playing games. It was important for the Browns to have any chance, in my opinion, in this game that Watson played last week. So I think if you'd have thrown him back into it this week without a week of sort of seeing what he could do, whether he could take any hits, all of that kind of stuff, I think you were on a sort of loser before you even started. So I think it'll be a lot more competitive. All right, let's just put it that way. I can understand why the Ravens are favourites, and obviously on the road, you can certainly understand them being, 6.5? Did you say? So basically, a touchdown favourite at home. It's difficult to pick against Baltimore. As much as my heart wants me to, my head would probably tell me that this is a really tough game. But it's a really key couple of weeks in the AFC North because you just mentioned it there. You've got Baltimore against Cincinnati on Thursday Night Football. You've also got the Browns against the Steelers next week. And you've obviously got this Browns against Baltimore matchup this week. So that division at the minute, and I say this all the time, and I'm not expecting any violins, mate, but if the Cleveland Browns played any other division, they would probably win many other divisions. They're just in such a bloody tough division. And yet again, it's proving it again this year with every team with a winning record. The only division that's got such a record, they've all been questioned on it this week in the press conferences, the coaches, and it just doesn't seemingly change. It's always been competitive. So I expect it to be a really competitive game again, probably just about favour Baltimore being the home team.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Baltimore as well, but I do feel like Cleveland have got a chance in this one, and if I was to bet on the spread in this one, I'd probably bet the under. I feel like it'll be a very close game, but yeah, I can't pick against Baltimore, especially in Baltimore as well. Okay, we'll go over to Minnesota, who host the Saints. The Saints are 2.5-point favourites on the road in this one. And Josh Dobbs will start for Minnesota after his heroics last week. He's had an extra week in the building, and obviously Jaron Hall was missing with a concussion after the big hit that he took in the start of the game last week. They may get Justin Jefferson back in this one too. They have activated him off IR. I don't know if we'll see him or not. I think they might be more precautious than anything with him. But at least he's back in practice. He was limited in practice this week. And after starting 0-3, they're now 5-1 in the last 6 games, only losing to the Chiefs. They won 4 in a row. The Vikings could sneak into the playoffs, couldn't they? At this point, it's a weird situation because when they were 1-3, people thought they were done.
Yeah, I was probably quite high on the Vikings pre-season. I know they won a lot of close games last year, so they're one of those teams that were difficult to really pinpoint. But I actually quite like the Vikings as a team. I do think the quarterback injury ultimately is going to be the big problem later on throughout the season. I think it's a perfectly winnable game for them this week. Don't get me wrong, but I think obviously they would have been a much sort of stronger fancy, if you like, with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. And it always amazes me, doesn't it? Kirk Cousins gets such a lambasting, and as soon as he's not there, it's like, oh, actually, he's not that bad, actually. So, yeah, really interesting one. I don't think the Vikings are out of the division race either. They're only a game back on the Lions. So I wouldn't say it's completely home and hosed for Detroit. I think they've got a couple of tricky ones left on their schedule. They've got to go to the Cowboys, for example. They've got the Chargers this week, where the Chargers are on a couple of game winning streak. And obviously the important thing, and this is where I think it's still open, is they've got both games against each other still to come. They actually played those 2 games, just checking the schedule now, in the last 3 weeks of the season. Really interesting to see where it goes. I think the Saints have been quietly plugging away. They're another team with a 5-4 record that aren't sort of setting the world alight. But again, I said at the start of the season, I think ultimately they've probably just about got the best quarterback in that division. It'll probably play out that way. They're 5-4. Everybody else 4-5, 3-5. But obviously, we've already talked about Carolina at length today. So I think the Saints are right there where they would want to be. I think it's a more important game probably for the Vikings in terms of keeping pace in the division. I think the Saints will probably ultimately have enough to win this division come the end of the season, regardless of what happens in this one. I actually think it's another decent game, to be honest. I think it's another decent game on paper. The Saints defense has been pretty good. They obviously won't have the shock factor in terms of Josh Dobbs that was there last week. They'll obviously be fully prepared for what he brings. It was a phenomenal performance, wasn't it, mate? Absolutely phenomenal performance.
He's been quite good in Arizona as well. I've been really impressed with Josh Dobbs compared to what we've seen some from other quarterbacks do this year, and that's the thing. I think he's been solid.
Yeah, I wrote about him this week in the Pick Six article. For a guy to be, he's bounced around a bit now. Let's be honest. He started off at Pittsburgh. He spent years there and never saw the field. He's then sort of bounced around between the Browns, Cardinals. Now he's with the Vikings. And like you say, whenever he's seen the field, he's done a reasonable enough job. So, let's be honest. He's playing either for the opportunity to be the Vikings quarterback in the future because they might decide to move on from Kirk Cousins, or he's at least playing for a job himself somewhere else next year. So he's got a 7-8 game audition coming up. He certainly couldn't have got off to a much better start, could he? So I think I will probably shade the Vikings in this one. But again, I think it's a really good slate of games this week, man. I think they're all pretty competitive, and I think, like I say, I'll probably just about shade the Vikings.
Yeah, I'm probably going to pick the Saints as well. I feel like this is a quite good thing as well. They're the only away favourite in this window. We've won 2 straight, and they have a favourable stretch coming up as well. They've got quite an easy schedule, so I'd like to think they've got, I just said, a very good chance of winning the NFC South. They've showed they can be a very good offense at points this season and a very good defense at points this season. But the problem is, never in the same game. They've never had a complete game. I thought they're the most talented team, so I'm going to go with them. But I honestly won't be surprised to see the Vikings win this game. But yeah, again, as you said, I think it'll be a really fun one to watch on Red Zone and back on Monday morning as well. Okay, we'll move over to Pittsburgh, who host the Packers, a proper old school feel to these games, obviously two very historic franchises. In this one as well, the Steelers are wearing their throwbacks, and if they win, they will become the 6th team in a row to win in throwback uniforms this season, which is quite a good stat. Thanks to CBS for that one. Again, this one will be low scoring. Both defenses are quite good, and neither offense has been great this season. I think coaching will probably be the difference in this one, and with Pittsburgh having 10 days rest as well, I'm picking them. I'd probably say hammer the over as well. It's only 3.5 points that the Steelers are favourites. Tomlin's favourite for coach of the year right now, and I'm not impressed by Matt LaFleur at all this year. The Packers losing Josh Nijman on the offensive line as well as Bakhtiari is not great either. They may get embarrassed against this Pittsburgh front, even though they're missing Cam Hayward in this one, probably with a groin injury. He got upgraded to didn't practice on Thursday. TJ Watt is up there with Myles Garrett in Defensive Player of the Year category this year. So I'm picking Pittsburgh in this one just because I've not been impressed by Green Bay at all. You had your whole thing on the start of the season saying you probably think they were in number 1 pick category. I didn't believe you then. Now I'm looking at this team, I'm thinking, God, I do not watching this team at all, and I'm not showing Jordan Love. So I'm picking the Steelers in this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be rinse and repeat. It's the way the Steelers have won all season. Like you say, you just imagine, again, it's going to come down to they'll probably take the ball away a little bit more often. I think Tomlin is a superior coach. I've said it consistently. For me, he's probably the best coach in the league year in and year out, in terms of maximising what he's got at his disposal. I wasn't convinced on Green Bay at the start of the year, mate, and I think, if it wasn't for, how bad the Panthers and how bad the Cardinals have been, Green Bay are in the conversation as being one of the worst teams that there is out there. Like I said at the start, nothing's really changed my opinion. They've only scored 160 points. They haven't looked particularly impressive. And again, I think it's a tough place for a quarterback to go on the road anyway. The terrible towels will be waving. Like you said, the throwbacks will create a bit of an atmosphere because these things always do. They shouldn't matter, but they do, and you just prove that in terms of the stats to back it up. So I would imagine, mate, like I say, rinse, repeat. The Steelers will be moving to 6-3.
There we are. Okay, we'll finish off the early window with the Bucs, who host the Titans. Will Levis has been named the permanent starter for the Titans, which obviously no surprises there. The way he's played the last couple of weeks is very good in his 2 starts, and he's now had 10 days to prepare for this Bucs game as well. The Bucs defense has been really good at the start of the year and has sort of tailed off recently. They started the season well at 3-1. The Bucks did, but they've lost 4 straight now, and it's not been a Baker Mayfield issue. It's actually been his best year, probably in a lot of numbers, protecting the football. He's done well in the pocket too. He's done very well to avoid sacks. He's been very smart, actually, Baker has this year, and obviously having a good offensive line helps with that, because we still in his year of Cleveland that he had a good offensive line. He led us into the playoffs. I'd probably say, we had this debate in the chat the other day, I'd probably say he's been a top 15 QB this year. I think the numbers probably back it up as well. The Bucks defense has started well, as I say, but it's held off. They've not really had the run game either, the Bucks have. So that probably again contributes to the losers streak, as well as the fact that they've missed some skill players with injuries and stuff. It sounds like the Titans are going to be about not only Traylon Burks in this one, he's out of concussion, but also Azeez Al-Shaair. It's 2 big misses, starting receiver, starting linebacker. So I think it'll be a close one, but I'm just going to pick the Bucks. I feel like they're probably due a performance, and obviously losing 4 straight. Todd Bowles has got a lot of pressure on him, because at the start of the season it was looking like quite a good coaching job, and now if it carries on as it is, he'll get fired at the end of the year. So yeah, I'm going to go for the Bucks to win this one.
Yeah, the 2 teams that are difficult to get a read on, really. I mean, the Titans are such an up and down bunch. There's no doubt about that. Like I say, I think Will Levis has given them a little bit of a spark. So as you say, unsurprising to see that sort of permanent change. DeAndre Hopkins has looked better in the last couple of weeks as well. The Bucs are a difficult team as well for me to really get a handle on, to be honest. I think, I don't disagree. I think Baker Mayfield's been okay this season. But like you say, you look at the overall production from the offense, it's not scoring tons of points. Mike Evans, he's probably just about on pace to keep his 1,000-yard seasons going, but it's going to be nip and tuck. I'm just looking at now, he needs 406 yards in the next 7 games or whatever they've got left, 8 games. So he's probably going to be okay, you would have assumed. But outside of Evans, they've really struggled, for sort of consistency at the position. So it is a really, really tough one. I think, again, let's put it this way. I think the AFC wildcard race, if Tennessee want any sort of shout at it, they need to win from here on in. Within reason. Obviously, they're going to lose a few. 11. If they won out 12 and 5, would definitely get them in. But you sort of really want to be sort of in and around the teams that are sort of at those 5-6 win marks. So I think a loss here probably really leaves them with a lot to do. So it's probably a more debilitating loss for Tennessee than it is for Tampa. Like I said, probably just about take Tampa at home, but it's not a confident selection.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll move over to the later window now, and we'll go into the feature game in that window, the one on Sky, the Lions heading into LA to play the Chargers. It's by far the best game of this window. The rest of them are rubbish. 2 teams with plenty to play for and plenty to prove as well, because the Lions are out to show that they're contenders again, and the Chargers need this game to jump into the AFC wildcard race. History tells us this game has probably got shootout written all over it, doesn't it, Shaun?
You'd like to think so, mate. You'd like to think so. Like you say, San Francisco. Los Angeles. I don't know where I went for San Francisco there for a minute. Los Angeles have sort of historically always been involved in these kind of shootout games, haven't they? And it normally comes down to a ridiculous Brandon Staley decision on 4th down at the end of the game. And it's kind of got that feel to this one, as you say. Could be who has got the ball last. I think the Lions have been good this year. Don't get me wrong. When I said earlier, I don't think the division's, all over. I do think that's because I think, like I said, the Vikings, I think, are pretty good. But I also think in terms of Detroit, let's see them against some real good teams. They obviously had their statement win, if you like, back in week 1, in terms of beating the Chiefs. But then you look at what they've done since then. Look at the teams that beat the Packers, losing record, Panthers losing record, Bucks losing record, Raiders. I think they're back to 500 now, but certainly at the time they would have had losing record. So it's just one of those teams that I think let's get them in against some quality opposition and let's see where it takes us. They've obviously got that favourable schedule because they've got the 2 Bears games to come. They've still got to bring the Packers in on, I believe that's Thanksgiving, isn't it, the Packers game? So they'll obviously host that one on Thanksgiving. So they've probably got 3 or 4 give-me's still on the schedule. But I think this is one of the games that you're looking at that they've got left and thinking, this one and the Cowboys game, both on the road, both against offenses that can put up a number of points. So I'm interested to see how Detroit sort of prepare for these ones because I think ultimately they're probably good enough to certainly get to the playoffs. Am I convinced they'll make a deep playoff run? Not at the minute, because like I say, I think when they've come up against some quality opposition, you can see with the results that they've had. Let's not forget, only 2 weeks ago, they got absolutely walloped by the Ravens. So, I'd like to see it to believe it. And I think this is the first real test that they've got coming up.
Yeah, we'll start with the Lions. Obviously, they've been one of the major talking points in the first quarter of the season. And then it's sort of the hype has cooled down after that. As you said, they were embarrassed by the Ravens, and they weren't that impressive against the Bucks, and the Raiders are either side of that game either. Obviously they've had a bye, so they're coming back from a bye. It came at a good time for them. You could probably say they have David Montgomery back as well at running back. It was just Jameer Gibbs for those 3 games at the end of before their bye. So we'll see in this game how Ben Johnson wants to reinvent his offense in that sort of 2-week period. As for the Chargers, they've been good these last few games, and it's because of their defense actually, which is a surprising thing, because Justin Herbert hasn't been great. He's not a great year by his standards. They've had a fair few injuries on offense. Obviously, they missed Eckler for half of the season. Mike Williams has gone down. Josh Palmer's gone down. They're both on IR. Keenan Allen's been hurt at points this year as well. And he is also hurt himself. He's non-throwing hand. He's got a thing on it as well. So, but Herbert's probably had the worst year of his career so far. Defense. The defense of the last 2 years, this team would suck if that was the case on offense. But then that's somehow now back in the playoff race. The defense has won their last 2 games. It kept them in the game against the Cowboys as well. They've been much better situationally since Weird 3, that weird win over Minnesota that they almost threw away and then somehow won because Cousins threw a pick in the end zone. Then they're now back at 500 after their disappointing start. As I said, defense has been better since moving on from JC Jackson, which is, I think he was probably the problem, as you can see then. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack have turned up. Derwin James is back and he's healthy. He's played most of the games. And they've been better in coverage since moving on from Jackson. Yeah, defense won in the game on Monday night. They had 8 sacks, 4 first fumbles, and 3 recoveries as well. It makes it a really, really weird game. But I'm going to pick the Lions just because I felt that, they're favourites in this one too, 2.5 points. I just felt they're the better talented team. They're certainly the least banged up team. The Chargers are very banged up, and it's whoever wins the battle of the Lions defense the Lions offense and the Chargers defense. And I'm probably just going to pick the Lions offense just because in the last couple of years it has been very high scoring. So I'll pick the Lions in this one, but I think it will be close. And again, this will be the game of the late window for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a really intriguing one. I've said that a few times. I sound like a broken record, but I do genuinely think the matchups are excellent this week, apart from the duds that we've got coming up. But it's certainly that early window in this one. Again, you look at who these sides have beaten in recent weeks, and the Chargers have taken care of business. But you look at the last 5, they've beaten the Jets, they've beaten the Bears, they've beaten the Raiders. They've lost, again, to decent teams. They've lost to the Chiefs. They've lost to the Cowboys. And similarly with the Lions, like I said, they've taken care of business against who you'd expect them to. But then when they had that quality opponent, they got absolutely walloped. So I think it's a really intriguing one. I think for some bizarre reason, probably because I'm about 12 points off the top of our Pick'ems League, I've gone with the Chargers because they're the sort of least favoured team. So I'm probably stretching to try and claw a few points back. But I wouldn't be surprised if this one goes either way. I think it will be a really enjoyable late window game. And I think it's telling, mate, that normally Sky go with a 9:25 game, but it shows how bad the 9:25 games are that the 9:05 is the one for the late window this week.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we'll go for the rest of the games, which, as you said, are rubbish. We'll start with Arizona, where Kyler Murray makes his return to Glendale, and obviously his first start of the season. It's a huge second half of the season for him as well, because he's playing for his future in Arizona. He'll get a job somewhere else because he's played pretty decent and he is a number 1 overall pick, so someone will trade for him. He's not like he's going to be a backup or anything. It's just it's where he's winning himself probably either a second chance in Arizona or a job somewhere else, a better job somewhere else, I assume. I'm looking forward to seeing what he looks like in this Drew Petzing offense, because he's dialed up some awesome stuff for Josh Dobbs this year. It looks way better than this Cliff Kingsbury offense that Kyler Murray was in. So the Cardinals haven't been bad, but they're a very well coached team. They're just a very, very badly talented team, and that's the thing. So we'll see. They're certainly the better coached team in this game. And I'm looking forward to seeing Kyler in general, actually, because he's an awesome player to watch. He's obviously former number 1 overall pick, and he's not played in a year as well. So, it'd be nice to see him play. As for Atlanta, they've played in the last few weeks. They've lost patience with Desmond Ridder, which is hardly surprising of how bad he looked. I said he looked like a rabbit in the headlights. That's a great comparison of what he looked like, because it just wasn't very pretty to watch at all. The defense has also regressed. They had a very good start to the season, but they've not looked great recently, and they have lost ground in the race for the NFC South title. The Saints have got like a 2-game lead at the moment. They have to win this game before their 2 games over the Saints coming up to really stay within a shot of it. But I just don't feel like that's going to happen. It looks like Arthur Smith has probably lost his way. Weird offensive coach this year. Obviously, John U. Smith is their number 1 target right now when you've got Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Matt Collins, Bijan Robinson on that roster. Tyrell Giz getting the most carries as well. Bijan's not used in the red zone at all. He's only just had his first touchdown the last couple of weeks. He's a receiving touchdown, but first rushing touchdown. Better talent this year. The offense has got worse. I actually liked the offense last year with Mariota and Ridder towards the end, but it's got worse this year. And I've always said give Arthur Smith time. He's not had a quarterback. Well, I feel like he's not really earning his chance to have a good quarterback at this point in time. So I'm going to pick the Cardinals to upset in this game. They may get James Conner back this week too, which will be a big factor in this one. Yeah, I'm going to pick the Cardinals to upset. I just got a feeling they got something up their sleeve, and they are the better coach team for sure in this game. So I'm going for them to upset and get a second win of the season.
Fair play, mate. That's an out there one. The Cardinals were abysmal last week. Obviously, like you say, Colin Murray will make a big difference. They're still massively banged up, though. I mean, like you say, Connor may come back. But let's be honest, if Connor's coming back and Murray are coming back, that's 2 really rusty pieces that, okay, obviously once they're up and running, they may well obviously give you that injection of talent, but it's a lot to expect for them first time out. You look across the line, DJ Humphries is questionable, Tristan Colon's questionable, Will Hernandez is questionable. They're 3 of the starting defensive linemen. It's just a lot to expect, in my opinion. I'm not impressed with Atlanta either, for what it's worth. It's not because I'm hugely keen on what Atlanta are doing. Like you say, Bijan's just a weird one. I drafted Bijan in fantasy, a Dynasty League, number 1 overall, as I'm sure most people did in Dynasty drafts. He's averaging 5 yards a carry, but they're just not giving him the ball. Just find it absolutely bizarre. Since he had this mystery illness, he's just seemingly disappeared off the face of the earth. He started the season reasonably well, but God knows what's happened in the last few weeks. Like you say, just really disappointing, to be honest, Atlanta. A lot of people's pick for that NFC South. I think a lot of people expected progression. It just hasn't come at all. I think they've probably got enough to win this one, but again, it's more because I think Arizona are just in such a poor state health-wise, and like I say, temper expectations. Kyler Murray's not played for over 11 months. And who knows how he's going to react when he takes that first hit, because you never know until that first hit comes in, do you? Particularly with the style that he plays. But yeah, we'll wait and see. Let's put it this way: Arizona have got more chance than the team coming up in the next game that we're going to talk about, mate.
Yeah. And that team is the Giants. So you go into Dallas, and the Cowboys are 16.5-point favourites. That is a humongous spread, obviously 3 scores. And rightly so too. Obviously, it's a backup QB against the Cowboys. A rookie backup QB as well against this Cowboys defence. They beat the Giants 40-0 in their own building in week 1. And I don't feel like it may be a similar scoreline, if I'm being honest. Tommy DeVito will get the job for the rest of the season. By the looks of things, Matt Barkley will work as the backup. And it looks like they're going to be picking very high in the draft, which now looking at it, they probably regret paying Daniel Jones. I never liked it in the first place. And if I'm them, I pick a quarterback here, because he's not going to take you to the next level, and you need everything else around him to be good to be a good quarterback, in my opinion. From a neutral point of view, though, I'm kind of hoping the Giants' defense can at least keep this one semi-close. They've played quite well recently. Obviously, they've limited the Bills, as well as many other teams. Like Kayvon Thibodeau's had a great couple of weeks. He's looking like a really good pass rusher right now. And Rick Martindale has these weird blitzes. He gets everyone got instruction from anyone. And obviously, you've seen it with games against Baltimore for years. But I really like the way they've played the last couple of weeks. The offense has been horrific there, and that's with Saquon Barkley. So that's not going to change. Again, the D lines. I'm hoping they'll have a little bit of success against the Cowboys A line as well, because Tyron Smith could be missing. He didn't practice on Thursday because of illness. But you can't pick against the Cowboys in this game, can you? It's so difficult not to.
No, you can't, mate. I mean, when you look at the Cowboys, they're one of these teams that, again, they can blow teams away. And if you look at the games that they've played at home, they've put up 30 points against New York Jets, 38 against the Patriots, and they put up 43 the last time they were at home against the Rams. They've absolutely taken care of business on their own field. Their losses have been away to San Francisco, to Philadelphia. No shame in either of those. And obviously the one that was the big surprise was the Arizona one, which I think everybody just put down to just one of those things. But ultimately the Cowboys will have more than enough. I feel for New York. I didn't think they'd go back to the playoffs regardless, but this season has just been an absolute unmitigated disaster, hasn't it? Just everything that could have gone wrong has seemingly gone wrong. And I think the defense, as well as they've been playing, there comes a point when you just want to give up. Let's be honest. And the offense has mustered as little as what it has mustered. It's really hard to see a path for the New York Giants to win this football game in particular. It's difficult to see too many more coming on the schedule, to be honest. They've still got some tough games ahead. They've got to play the Eagles twice. They've got to play the Packers and the Saints, who both got decent defenses. So it's a tough one, mate. But look, to be honest, the 17-point spread, I think that's more than fair. I've got to be honest. I think that's more than fair. I'm even tempted at sort of even wanting to have a few quid on 17 points, because I could see this being 30 points plus, to be completely honest.
If you're a Giants fan, let's not forget that the last time the Cowboys had this bigger spread, they lost to the Cardinals. So that was they're now second biggest spread of the season, and they did lose that game. So there is a little bit of hope there, you could say. But I think it will be a pretty easy Cowboys victory. The last game of the late window is Washington heading into Seattle, and Seattle are looking to get back on track because they lost massively to Baltimore last week. They got run over, as you said, nearly 300 yards on the ground. And their offense is the thing that's not been impressive, though, this season. The last 4 games especially, because Junior Smith he's been okay, but the offensive line's already starting to look banged up now. The receivers are definitely banged up. It feels like DK Metcalf hasn't practiced in about 2 months. He's played a lot of games, but he's not practiced in a while now. And some games he's missed. It's very much touch and go with him. He's had this ongoing issue. Tyler Lockett's been banged up a little bit as well, leaving it to the likes of Jackson Smith and Jigbo and Jake Bobo to make an impact. A win for Washington here will move them to 5-5 and within a shot of making the playoffs. I think they've got a shot as well too, to be fair. The offense is putting up points despite this horrific offensive line. It's on pace to break a record for the most sacks ever right now, and I think somehow is actually doing all right behind that as well. I think this one's got a shootout in the making. As I said, I think both of these teams are probably going to go gung-ho, and as it's in Seattle, it's very hard to beat the Seahawks in Seattle. I'm going to pick them, but I think it'll be closer than 6.5 points. And I quite like watching this Washington team, and I think they will make this one interesting for sure.
Yeah, these are two teams, again, that I'm struggling to really get a good read on, to be honest, because they're both blowing a little bit hot and cold. I think the Commanders have improved on defense massively since the blowout that they suffered to the Bears on that Thursday night football game. Since then, they're giving up 16, 14, 17. Take the Philadelphia game away, because Philadelphia are arguably the best team in football. So they've been a lot better on the defensive side of the ball. Ultimately, Sam Howell has looked pretty good, as you say. He threw for 325 yards in last week's win, 397 in that Philadelphia defeat. So they're getting plenty of production. The Seahawks, like you say, got to win at home against the Browns. Being at home makes a key difference for Seattle. They did get absolutely walloped last week. I think Seattle disappeared for a lot of the Browns game in terms of the offense. It sort of scored a lot of points in the first quarter and then did nothing until the final drive of the game. And they do seem to play in fits and starts. I think they need to commit to the run game more than what they do. Like you say, DK Metcalf, he's playing, but he doesn't look like DK Metcalf that we know. Tyler Lockett seems to have games where he's brilliant and then games where he doesn't register anything on the box score. I think that's very much dependent on the opponent. But for me, like I say, Kenneth Walker and even the rookie that they got, was it Charbonnet?
Yeah, is that Charbonnet, yeah.
Yeah, they've done a decent job in terms of carrying the ball when given the opportunities. They've only rushed combined as a team 188 times this year, so it's not something that they commit massively to. I've got to pick Seattle at home. I think, like I say, I think it does make a big difference than being at home. It could be a shootout. It could also be a 6-3 type game, because you just don't know what kind of teams you're going to get to turn up in this one. So, but I will just about take Seattle at home, I think.
Awesome. We'll finish off with Sunday Night Football, and what a game this is. Why the league decided to keep this in this window rather than flex it out, because they could have had the opportunity to flex it out this first week that you can. I don't know. There's better games, especially like the Bengals Houston game, for example. Or the Cleveland Baltimore game. Like those are both in the 6 p.m. window. One of them could have. CBS probably would have protected one of them, but one of them could have gone in this game, in this slot for sure. It's not a great week of games compared to last week, for example, because last week was amazing, but there are still some fun ones in that early window that I think, again, are probably more suited to this game. But who cares? We've got it now. The Jets were horrific offensively against the Chargers on Monday night, especially in the red zone and on third down, which is where you really need to start doing things differently on offense. The defense has played well as always. Again, it's one of the best units in the league, but the offense has just been letting them down. The Raiders won under interim head coach Antonio Pierce last week. Their new offensive staff, obviously, there was a clear out of all of McDaniel's staff. They actually put together quite a good offense. They fed Josh Jacobs, and he had a very good game, which he hasn't had all season. They suddenly look much better too. The defense has sort of relatively impressed me this year for the Raiders as well. It won them their 3 of their 4 games, and they're not the Jets unit by any means, but when it has mattered, they've won games. They've won a couple in prime time as well, and they've not been beat up like they were the last couple of years for sure. I just feel like, when push comes to shove, the Jets defense will frustrate Aiden O'Connell, obviously rookie quarterback, going up against a very good defense. It'll be an ugly, low-scoring game, but I feel like the Jets win this one. And if they do win this one, obviously they'll move to 5-4, and they might be getting Aaron Rodgers back soon. So that's a very, very good sign for them if he does come back, because they probably could make a late push into the playoffs, especially with how Buffalo have been as well. And they've still got to play Buffalo and Miami twice too.
Yeah, it's not not one for the neutral, really, is it? I'd probably fancy the Raiders at home. I think it's a tough environment for Zach Wilson to go into. I think again it will be low scoring, as you've alluded to. I don't think there's an awful lot between these two. There's probably more of a feel good factor around the Raiders at the minute. It's interesting, isn't it, when a new coach takes over, sometimes you do get that bounce instantly. Obviously, the decision to move away from Jimmy Garoppolo now, regardless of injury status. So we'll wait and see. If Aiden O'Connell is really struggling, will it be another opportunity for Jimmy G to come off the bench and sort of turn into the hero for the week? We'll wait and see on that one. I think, like you say, Josh Jacobs was good last week. I think, he obviously, was it last year he led the league or the year before?
Mm-hmm. Last year, yeah. And then this year he's just not had the football at all. So it is weird.
Weird. It is strange how some of these coaches utilise the positional players, isn't it, as we've said earlier on. But yeah, like I say, I don't think it's a particularly great game. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is coming back anytime soon either, for what it's worth. And to be honest, if New York lose more games than they win, then that will just quieten down as well, because I just don't see how they would risk him if the season is effectively over anyway. I'll just about take Las Vegas in this one, but like I say, mate, I won't be staying up for it. That's for sure.
No chance I will either. Okay, thank you for joining me on this podcast, Shaun. It's been great to have you on. Again, obviously, you've not been on since the very start of the season as well, so a lot's happened since you last came on. A lot of these teams are they've sort of gone to mean. A lot of them have sort of either impressed or really been a disappointment. But now we're in the second half of the season. It's really nice to be back in the swing of things. And again, thanks for joining us, mate.
Pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure, mate. And you're doing a great job, man. So keep it up.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Right, we will see you on either Monday night or Tuesday, probably Tuesday morning. I'll just because got a very busy weekend, so I don't know if I'm going to watch all the games on Monday, but we'll probably react to the Monday night football game between the Bills and the Broncos, and I'll post a podcast on Tuesday, I expect. So look out for the Week 10 recap then. But until now, this has been a Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. I've been your host, Sam Wilson, and we'll see you after all the Week 10 games.